Eat it.
Probably in the last instance you could eat it, but get rid of the field tape.
Well, there we have it. Gordon Carrera, our security correspondent, reporting there. It is 8:45. Screenings of a new film called Lady of Heaven have been pulled from the Cineworld chain after protests in Birmingham, Sheffield and Bolton. The Muslims who protested, some were carrying placards saying, "Our Prophet, our honour." And the film includes a storyline about the Prophet Muhammad's daughter, Fatima. Let's talk now to our religion editor, Aleem Makboul. What's at the heart of this issue, Aleem?
Well, those placards might have talked about the Prophet. Actually, a lot of the problems that protesters have with this film are mainly with the way that early figures in Sunni Islam are portrayed. So this is by a Kuwaiti, now British filmmaker, a Shia cleric, who has had issues in the past while he was in Kuwait about sort of extreme views about early figures in Sunni Islam. And as you know, around 85% of the Muslims around the world are Sunni, and the split happened very early on. And it is his portrayal in this film, his drawing parallels between the actions of early figures in Sunni Islam and drawing parallels with their behavior with the actions of Islamic State in Iraq in 2014 that has caused a lot of the controversy.
It's interesting because it makes it completely different, doesn't it, to some of the controversy we've seen in the past when blasphemy has been mentioned, images of the Prophet Muhammad, etc. This is so at its heart about Sunnis protesting against a Shia-aligned film.
Yes, that's most of the problem with it. There are some issues as well because the Prophet Muhammad, who is depicted in this film as someone of the purest character, for example, it's not about his character. There is a depiction of the Prophet Muhammad in this film. No single actor is given a credit for playing him because there are elements of his face that have been generated by CGI. So, but as you said, most of the issues with this are about the portrayal of close friends, advisors, and the initial prominent figures in Sunni Islam, and the way, as I say, the suggestion is made that their behavior is similar to the behavior of leaders of the Islamic State in Iraq, because it starts in Mosul in 2014, and then with the killing of a woman called Fatima, which also is the Prophet's daughter's name, and then the orphaned son meets an old woman who starts telling the story of the Prophet and early Islam. But it's the portrayal, as I say, of those figures around the friends of the Prophet Muhammad, the early figures in Sunni Islam. Of course, it was a violent time when that schism happened, and that is what the filmmaker is portraying in a modern day setting.
It's interesting to think about how alive to some people these events from centuries gone by still are. How much of an issue is sectarianism and a Sunni Shia divide amongst Muslims in Britain today?
Well, actually, I mean, some of the protesters, and there are small groups of protesters, you say, who've been outside theatres in Bolton and Birmingham and other places, say that it has been a mix of protesters outside Shia and Sunni protesters who've been outside these cinemas. But and actually, some countries that have banned this film include Iran, which of course is predominantly Shia. So there are, of course, there is, of course, the issue that whatever happens abroad comes back here within different communities. It's not as obviously pronounced as it is in other parts of the world, but the divisions that play out around the world, of course, play out here to some extent as well.
Aleem, thank you.
It is 11 minutes to 9. Women are reaching retirement age with the big
I thought I'd play that to you because I think that's probably the best explanation about why people are upset. So basically, the Shia, I mean, the movie was made by a Shia director, and the Sunnis don't like it. And they don't like it because of the way some characters were portrayed, but we don't know exactly why. But anyway, they're up in arms about it. And the thing that I noticed listening to it the second time round, which I didn't catch first time, was that Iran, which is majority Shia, banned it. And maybe I can find out why they did. What was the official reason? You would have thought, it's banned in Iran, Pakistan, and Egypt because I suppose it would pose public order problems for even these countries. So the film was directed by somebody called Eli King in his directorial debut, and written by 12 Shia Muslim cleric Yasser al-Habib, the spiritual leader of the Mahdi Servants Union. So the Sunnis have a problem with this Yasser al-Habib. Let's go have a look at him on Wikipedia. He is a Kuwaiti 12 Shia scholar and the head of the London-based Qadam al-Mahdi organisation, as well as an Al-Muhassin Mosque in Fulmer, Buckinghamshire, and the writer of Lady of Heaven. Al-Habib's work focuses on Islamic history, drawing on Shia and Sunni sources. Al-Habib started his religious activities in Kuwait, starting off as a member of the Dawa Party. Later he found a non-profit religious organisation named Qadam al-Mahdi Organisation, and he also expressed his religious views regarding Abu Bakr and Umar, and criticised them sharply, which led to anger. The mainstream Sunnis in Kuwait and other Arabic-speaking Sunni communities, and finally to the arrest of al-Habib. Later, in February 2004, he was released under an annual pardon announced by the Emir of Kuwait on the occasion of the country's National Day, but his rearrest was ordered a few days later. Al-Habib fled Kuwait before he was sentenced in absentia to 10 years imprisonment, and spent months in Iraq and Iran before gaining asylum in the United Kingdom, which is his current place of residence. But we still don't know what's so upsetting to the Sunnis. Al-Habib was interviewed by... Okay, we won't read all that boring stuff. Okay. Imprisonment. He was abducted on a Kuwait city street on the afternoon of 30th November 2003 by unknown individuals and taken away in an unmarked vehicle. His family was not informed that he had been detained by security forces until the following day. Ali Habib was reportedly arrested in connection with an audio cassette recording of a lecture he gave to an audience of 10 to 20 people in a close environment on Islamic historical issues. His research is believed to have relied heavily on Wahhabi references and texts, and and is said to have angered hardline Wahhabi groups who have used their influence within the establishment to bring about the maximum punishment against al-Habib. Okay, so he upset the hardline Sunnis. Because the Wahhabis are Sunnis. On 20th January 2004, he was reportedly convicted of questioning the conduct and integrity of some of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad in a lecture he had delivered and sentenced to 10 years in prison in Kuwait. He has reportedly been subject to several orchestrated violent attacks in prison by Wahhabi inmates. However, his imprisonment was cut short in 2004 by a royal pardon on the occasion of the country's National Day, but his rearrest was ordered a few days later as his name was included in the royal pardon through a clerical error. I'm suddenly reminded of Jesus. He fled the country first to Iraq and then to Iran. So actually the Iranians, yes, of course, the Iranians would be more likely to be sympathetic since they are Shia. Then he went to London where Saeed Mojtaba Hosseini Shirazi, younger brother of Ayatollah Sadiq Shirazi, has lived for 40 years. Finally, he could get asylum in Britain. Now he lives in Fulmer, Buckinghamshire, and has started his religious and political activities such as founding of Al-Muhassin Mosque and setting up Fadak TV channel. Views. He recorded 2 lectures in English entitled Who Killed the Prophet Muhammad and Why Do Shiites Hate Umar ibn al-Khattab? Sunni al-Sharab newspaper described Sheikh al-Habib as a traitor and apostate in its main page at the time that al-Habib cursed Abu Bakr and Umar. So who's Abu Bakr? He was the founder and first caliph of the Rashidun Caliphate, ruling from June 632 until his death. He was the most prominent companion, closest advisor, and father-in-law of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. Okay? Umar ibn al-Khattab was the second Rashidun caliph, ruling from August 634 until his assassination in 644. He succeeded Abu Bakr as the second caliph of the Rashidun Caliphate on 23rd August 634. Umar was a senior companion and father-in-law of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. He was also an expert Muslim jurist known for his pious and just nature, which earned him the epithet Al-Faruq, the one who distinguishes between right and wrong. Umar initially opposed Muhammad, his distant Qurayshite kinsman and later son-in-law. Following his conversion to Islam in 616, he became the first Muslim to openly pray at the Kaaba. Umar participated in almost all battles and expeditions under Muhammad, who bestowed the title Al-Faruq, the distinguisher, upon Umar for his judgments. After Muhammad's death in June 632, Umar pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr as the first caliph and served as the closest advisor to the latter until August 634, when the dying Abu Bakr nominated Umar as his successor. Under Umar, the caliphate expanded at an unprecedented rate, ruling the Sasanian Empire and more than 2/3 of the Byzantine Empire. His attacks against the Sasanian Empire resulted in the conquest of Persia in less than 2 years. Pretty good. According to Jewish tradition, Umar set aside the Christian ban on Jews and allowed them into Jerusalem and to worship. Umar was assassinated by the Persian slave Abu Lu'lu'a Firuz in 644. Umar is generally viewed by historians to be one of the most powerful and influential Muslim caliphs in history. He is revered in the Sunni Islamic tradition as a great, just ruler and paragon of Islamic virtues, and some hadiths identify him as the second greatest of the Sahaba after Abu Bakr. Sahaba means companions, by the way. He is viewed negatively in the Twelver Shia tradition. Okay. So I kind of need to know quickly why Shias don't like him. That's quite a lot to read, so I have to be quite selective. The motivation for the assassination of Umar by his Persian slave is not clear. Oh, he's mentioned by Edward Gibbon in The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Okay, so obviously this is something I have to read. Okay. Religious legacy. Sunni views. Umar is remembered by Sunnis as a rigid Muslim of sound and just disposition in matters of religion, a man they title Farouk, meaning leader, jurist, and statesman, and the second of the rightly guided caliphs. He patched his clothes with skin, took buckets on his 2 shoulders, always riding his donkey without the saddle, rarely laughing and never joking with anyone. On his ring is written the words, "Enough is death," as a reminder to you, O Omar. He did not seek advancement for his own family, but rather sought to advance the interests of the Muslim community, the Ummah. According to one of Muhammad's companions, Abdullah ibn Masud, Umar's submission to Islam was a conquest, his migration was a victory, his imamate period of rule was a blessing. I have seen when we were unable to pray at the Kaaba until Umar submitted. When he submitted to Islam, he fought them, the pagans, until they left us alone and we prayed. So this is the favourable Sunni view of Umar. Now the Shia obviously have a different view. Umar is viewed very negatively in the literature of Twelver Shia and is often regarded as a usurper of Ali's right to the caliphate. After the Saqifa assembly chose Abu Bakr as caliph, Umar marched with armed men to Ali's house in order to get the allegiance of Ali and his supporters. Sources indicate that a threat was made to burn Ali's house if he refused, but the encounter ended when Fatima, wife of Ali, intervened. According to the majority of Twelver scholar writings, Fatima was physically assaulted by Umar, and this caused her to miscarry her child Musin ibn Ali, and led to a death soon after. However, some Twelver scholars such as Fadlala reject these accounts of physical abuse as a myth, although Fadlala mentioned that his speech is a probability and not a certain reason to reject that event. Another Shia sect, the Zadiyah, followers of Zayd ibn Ali generally has two views about that. Some branches, such as Jarudia, don't accept Umar and Abu Bakr as legitimate caliphs. For instance, Jarudia believes that Muhammad appointed Ali and believes that the denial of the imamate of Ali after Muhammad's passing would lead to infidelity and deviation from the right path. The other view accepts Umar and Abu Bakr as legitimate caliphs, albeit inferior to Ali. According to Al-Tabari and Ibn Atam, when asked about Abu Bakr and Umar, Zayd ibn Ali replied, "I have not heard anyone in my family renouncing them both, nor saying anything but good about them. When they were entrusted with government, they behaved justly with the people and acted according to the Quran and Sunnah." So what I'm going to do now is read you this entry about the attack on Fatima's house. So in case you've forgotten, Fatima is the daughter of Muhammad, who married Ali. I don't mind learning about these things incidentally. Okay. The attack on Fatima's house refers to the disputed violent attack on the house of Fatima, daughter of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. The attack reportedly took place shortly after Muhammad's death, and it was instigated by Muhammad's successor Abu Bakr and led by Umar, an aide to Abu Bakr. The purpose of the attack is said to have been the arrest of Fatima's husband, Ali, who had refused to acknowledge Abu Bakr's authority. It is alleged that Fatima's injuries during the raid directly caused the young Fatima's miscarriage and death within 6 months of Muhammad's demise. The above allegations are brought forward by the Shia and categorically rejected by the Sunni, the two largest branches of Islam. On the one hand, Shia historians list multiple early Sunni sources that corroborate these allegations and point out that sensitive information has been censored by Sunni scholars who were concerned with the righteous presentation of Muhammad's companions. On the other hand, for Sunnis, it is unimaginable that Muhammad's companions would violate the Quranic sanctity of Muhammad's family and home. In turn, Sunni Islam holds that Fatima died from grief following Muhammad's death and that her child died in infancy of natural causes. It is well documented that Fatima's dying wish was that Abu Bakr and Umar should not attend her funeral. She was buried under the cover of night and her exact burial place remains unknown. Fatima occupies a similar position in Islam that Mary, mother of Jesus, occupies in Christianity, and her discontent is famously linked to Muhammad's anger in the Hadith literature. In view of Fatima's place in Islam, these allegations are highly controversial, with beliefs primarily split along sectarian lines between Sunni and Shia denominations. Are you still there? Okay, 4 of you still watching. Background. In the immediate aftermath of Muhammad's death in 632 CE, the Ansar, natives of Medina, gathered in the Saqifa courtyard of the Saida clan. According to Magdalene, I don't know what that is. he's a German-American author and scholar of Islamic history. The Ansar likely believed that their allegiance to Muhammad had elapsed with his death and expected that Muhammad's community would disintegrate. For this reason, the purpose of their meeting might have simply been to establish control over their city, Medina, under the belief that the majority of the Muhajirun migrants from Mecca would return to Mecca anyway. Nevertheless, Abu Bakr and Umar, both senior companions of Muhammad, upon learning about the meeting, hastened to the gathering and reportedly forced their way into Saqifa. After a heated meeting in which a chief of the Ansar is said to have been beaten into submission by Umar, those gathered at the Saqifa agreed on Abu Bakr as the new head of the Muslim community. The Saqifa event excluded Muhammad's family, who were preparing to bury him, and most of the Muhajirun, the migrants from Mecca, who they're in Medina now. To protest this election, members of Muhammad's clan, the Banu Hashim, and several of his companions gathered at Fatima's house. The protesters, including Fatima, held that Ali was a rightful successor of Muhammad, appointed by him at the event of Ghadir Khumm. A number of close companions of Muhammad, including Abbas and Zubair, were among the protesters. Ali is reported to have explained his position to Abu Bakr. After the gathering at Saqifa, Abu Bakr reportedly ordered his aide, Umar, to secure the pledge of allegiance from Ali. Umar has been noted for his severity and short temper. Overwhelming evidence points that Umar then led an armed mob to Ali's house and threatened to set the house on fire if Ali and his supporters would not pledge their allegiance to Abu Bakr. According to the Sunni historian al-Tabari, Umar shouted, "By God, either you come out to render the oath of allegiance to Abu Bakr, or I will set the house on fire." The scene soon grew violent, and in particular, Zubair was disarmed and carried away. Again, according to al-Tabari, Zubair, who was among the protesters in Ali's house, had come out of the house with a sword drawn, but tripped on something and was then attacked. Eventually, the armed mob retreated after Fatima loudly admonished them. "O my father, O the messenger of God, what is this that has befallen us after you at the hands of the son of Khattab, Umar, and the son of Abu Quhafa, Abu Bakr?" To force Ali into line, Abu Bakr later placed a boycott on him and, more broadly, on Muhammad's clan, the Banu Hashim. The strategy proved successful over time. Even in the mosque, Ali prayed alone. Ali is reported to have later repeatedly said that he would have resisted Abu Bakr had there been 40 men with him. By that point, however, only his wife Fatima and their 4 small children remained on his side. Ali chose passive resistance instead. While it is believed that Ali continued to passively resist the authority of Abu Bakr until Fatima died, what followed after the above altercation is uncertain. According to Abbas, now who's Abbas? He's a Pakistani-American scholar. According to Abbas, what followed has been the subject of intense controversy and censorship in Islam. On the one hand, Shia historians lived over a dozen well-guided Sunni sources which mention that Fatima suffered injury and miscarriage during a raid on her house led by Umar. On the other hand, it is known that sensitive information has been censored by Sunni scholars who were concerned with the righteous presentation of Muhammad's companions. In particular, Shia sources include similar variations of Umar's final attempt to subdue Ali. attributed to Muhammad's close companion Salman and supplemented by Shia imams. When Umar arrived with an armed mob to take Ali away by force, Fatima, pregnant at the time, firmly refused them entry. Instead, from behind the door, she implored Umar to fear God and leave them alone. An enraged Umar ignored Fatima's pleadings, asked for a torch, and set the door on fire before hurling himself inside and striking Fatima behind the door. Screaming in pain, Fatima continued to resist the intruders. There are reports that Umar physically assaulted her with a sheathed sword. Fatima's husband, Ali, rushed towards her before being overpowered and dragged to Abu Bakr by the aggressors. Fatima tried to position herself between Ali and the aggressors before being struck by Kun Fud. She carried the bruise from the assault when she died. Muawiyah later alluded to Ali's violent arrest in a letter before the Battle of Siffin. Shortly after the alleged raid, there are reports that Fatima miscarried her son Musin, whose name had been chosen by Muhammad before his death. Sunni sources, however, maintain that Musin was born but died in infancy. It is believed that Ali continued to passively resist the authority of Abu Bakr until Fatima died. Controversy. Shia holds that her injuries during the raid by Umar directly caused the young Fatima's miscarriage and death a few months after Muhammad's demise. For Sunnis, however, it is unimaginable that Muhammad's companions would violate the Quranic sanctity of Muhammad's family and home. Both al-Tabari and al-Masudi write that Abu Bakr, on his deathbed, regretted his order to break into Fatima's house. This appears to be a sensitive admission that has been censored by, for example, the Sunni author Abu Ubayd in his book Kitab al-Amwal. It might be noted that Umar's history of violence against women is well documented. A common argument is that Ali would have never continued his relations with Umar had the latter organized a raid on Ali's home. In response, it has been suggested that Ali gave up his rights and exercised restraint for the sake of a nascent Islam. There are reports that Ali turned down Abu Sufyan's offer to support his claim to the caliphate. Later, in reference to Abu Bakr's caliphate, a poem began to circulate among the Banu Hashem, which ended with, "Surely we have been cheated in the most monstrous way." Ali forbade the poet to recite it, adding that the welfare of Islam was dearer to him than anything else. While Ali never withheld his help for the cause of Islam, the mutual distrust and hostility of Ali with Abu Bakr and Umar is well documented. About the outcome of Saqifa, Ali was recorded to have said that, "I would have overturned the tables if I was not concerned about the divisiveness and disunity leading some to return to the times of infidelity." The prevalent view is that Fatima never reconciled with Abu Bakr and Umar. It is well cited that Fatima's dying wish was that Abu Bakr and Umar should not attend her funeral. According to Al-Imama wa Al-Siyasa, when the two visited Fatima on her deathbed, she reminded them of Muhammad's words that Fatima is part of me, and whoever angers her has angered me. The dying Fatima then told the two that they had indeed angered her and that she would soon take a complaint to God and his Prophet Muhammad. It has been suggested that the damning implications of Fatima's anger motivated the invention of stories about the reconciliation of Fatima with Abu Bakr and Umar. It is well documented that Fatima's dying wish was that Abu Bakr and Umar should not attend her funeral. She was buried under cover of night, and her exact burial place remains unknown. Well, I've learned something new today. So we are, I think, a little wiser as to what these shares are on about. It's not something I care about. It's like oh, okay. I haven't finished complete reading all the stuff about this. What's his name? Al Habib person. So basically, Yasser Al Habib recorded 2 lectures entitled "Who Killed the Prophet Muhammad and Why Do Shiites Hate Umar?" And this upsets the Sunnis. So, sailing under Wahhabism. So Al-Habib said, Wahhabism is a criminal and violent ideology founded by a mentally ill man named Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab about 3 centuries ago. Its main principle is that all Muslims who perform tawassul and visit their graves are regarded as apostates and infidels. Therefore, the seizure of their life, property, and women would, like that of infidels, be religiously lawful and permissible. So what is tawassul? Oh, it's a very long explanation. I don't know if you really care about it. Okay, let's forget about tawassul and move on to other things. If you're really that interested, you can look it up yourself. Views on Sunnis. This is Al-Habib's views on Sunnis. Sheikh Al-Habib refers to Sunnis as Bakris, meaning the followers of Abu Bakr. He says that the real Sunnis are the ones who follow the Sunnah of Muhammad, that is, Shia Muslims. He continues that Sunnis today follow the Sunnah and teachings of Abu Bakr instead, having rejected Ali ibn Abu Talib. Oh gosh. So he's denying the fact that Sunnis are even Sunnis. He explains in one of his lectures titled Bakris think they are Sunnis, but in reality are not, when people wanted to distance themselves from the Shia and follow Muawiyah. They started calling themselves the Jama'ah. He explains that the reality between why people call themselves Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah only began after the Umayyad ruler Umar bin Abdul Aziz forbade the Sunnah tradition of cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib publicly as previously invented by the Muawiyah. It was upon then that people protested to this new prohibition, declaring that Umar bin Abdul Aziz had prohibited the Sunnah of cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib. Thus they began calling themselves Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, stressing that they adhere to the Sunnah of cursing Ali ibn Talib, blah blah. It's okay, so obviously there have been, at each other's throats for centuries on who did what. And in October 2010, Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei tried to calm tensions between Shias and Sunnis by issuing a fatwa against insulting Muhammad's companions and wives, cursing the wives of the prophets and the wives of the great Prophet Muhammad is one of the taboos and prohibitions. After Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei issued the fatwa outlawing the insult of Sunni dignitaries, meaning Aisha, Abu Bakr, and Umar, al-Habib responded by calling the Islamic Republic of Iran oppressive. He continued by referring to Khamenei as so-called Ali al-Khamenei, who pretends to be a Shia scholar. He sounds like a bit of a troublemaker, doesn't he? His reasoning for naming the Iranian government as oppressive was because the regime in Iran today unjustly arrests anyone who celebrates the occasion of Fahd al-Zahra and prevents people from visiting the tomb of Abu Lulu. I don't know who they are. But I like the name Abu Lulu. Who's that? Oh, he was a Persian slave known to have assassinated Omar. Okay. So he would be considered a Shia hero. Senior Iranian cleric Nasser Makaram Shirazi has referred to al-Habib as a hired agent or a madman and stated recently, an illiterate fool, non-clergy UK citizen in the name of Shia has insulted sacred matters of Sunni Muslim brothers. Al-Habib has been criticised by several figures and leaders who speak in the name of Shi'ism, including Ahmad Naqshbandi, leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, Ali Khamenei, who also issued a fatwa against cursing of Muhammad's companions, and Nasser Makaram Shirazi. Now, well, I guess today has been the a day when I inform myself of these, about the recruiting of Ali. I didn't study any of this. This is just, I don't care about all these stories. I've told you secular Koranism is not interested in the stories. I think it's just dumb, to argue about, what might have happened, all those centuries ago. I don't care. And this is the distinction between clear cause Sharia and the other kind. So we can let them fight, about whether Fatima actually forgave Umar and Abu Bakr on her deathbed. Well, what would be the point? It'd be like arguing about whether God exists or not. I think life's too short, don't you? I never claim to be an expert on, the stories about the companions, because as I have said to you many a time, I'm not interested in the narrative. Secular Koranism is not a belief system. You don't have to believe in anything. You just have to work out if the rules of secular Koranism would work for you. And support it, if so, and you don't have to be Muslim, you don't even have to believe in God. So on the question of this controversy, how would it be resolved in a secular Koranist theocracy? So if I were in charge, I would. Well, you see, the thing is, I think it would be entertaining. I mean, one of the ideas that flashed across my mind about how to resolve this issue is to keep inviting pairs of Sunni and Shia people who want to argue it out to do it on my channel. So they just come, and I wouldn't even say anything. So they just have to. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to argue. I'm not even going to moderate or structure it. It would be on my channel, and they could just use whatever information and arguments that they're going to. Because it would be a neutral channel. I don't care. I have no knowledge of the scholarship about who said what and who did what, and I don't really care, and I wouldn't even moderate. And so a Sunni and Shia Muslim would just argue, and I guess the chat would be quite interesting, and people would listen if they cared enough, and then people can vote about who they thought won the argument, and if they're not happy, they can do it again. Another pair can do it again, and in the meantime, the cinemas would be open. I mean, they would be screening this movie, which, reading between the lines of the Guardian review, suggests that it's all a bit boring. But I guess the DVD will sell quite well, I guess. You can probably get it on Netflix soon, right? So, although it's disappointing for Cineworld that they can't see it, you can see that, Iran and Egypt and Pakistan has decided not to screen it because, they don't want all these Muslims hacking at each other, over some story that neither side will be able to prove. But secular Koranism wouldn't take a view on it. It would have to be completely neutral on it, just because it's one of the principles of secular Koranism to ignore the stories in the Quran. Oh, hello, Blue. I don't know you, but you said a very sensible thing, so I'm grateful for that. All right, so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you all for coming.